Hello, we welcome you all to our Orthopedic Solution Academy program. Hope you are all well during this COVID-19 pandemic time. Uh, we are going to arrange a new program that is Orthopedic Solution Academy. This will be a completely academic program, and we will discuss on a matter that is related to our medical sector. Hope that will help to our junior doctors, all level doctors, and as well as the general people. Today, our topic is the clinical examination of foot and ankle. That is very much important and very much related to our daily practice. And we have our speaker. We all know him, a very renowned arthroscopic and foot and ankle surgeon and very popular, Dr. Sundarajan sir from Coimbatore Ganga Hospital, former president, Foot and Ankle Society of India. Sir, welcome to our show.
Thank you, Tanvir.
Viewers, we have our very learned academic panel that is Professor Amjad Hussain and Dr. Raji Brahman from Calcutta and Professor Amjad Hussain from Bangladesh. Professor Amjad Hussain, the recently elected Vice President of SICOT, the Asia Pacific region, and the President of SARC, Association of Orthopedic Society. And Rajiv Brahman, sir, he is a very popular surgeon both in Dhaka and Calcutta, the consultant of Joint and Bone Care Hospital, Calcutta. I would like to welcome both of our academic panel to our Orthopedic Solution Academy program. Sir, welcome you both.
Thank you.
Dear viewers, we will just start our program related, that is a clinical examination of foot and ankle. And now I would like to request our honorable speaker, Dr. Sundarajan sir, to start our presentation. Sir, would you please start your presentation, sir?
Thank you. Tanvir, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So first of all, good evening, everyone. And I think I take this opportunity to thank Tanvir for initiating this wonderful program. And also I thank Dr. Amjad, is a Vice President of CICAT, and as he said, other renowned faculties, along with our Rajiv, my good friend from Calcutta. So I will start this first program with the examination of the foot and ankle. I think this will be very helpful for the postgraduates, or if they're a young surgeon who is starting his career in foot and ankle. I hope that this webinar will be helpful for them. Before I start my examination, I would go on some slides about anatomy of the foot and ankle. This is very, very important. It's like a hand. We know that hand, how complex it is with the tendons, bones, and nerves and vessels. The same thing here in the foot. So it is very important to understand some anatomy before you proceed for the examination. So I'll start with the regions of the foot. It's very important to understand the terms. If you mean, what do you mean by hind foot? So many times we quote hind foot, we should think about, we are talking about ankle joint and the subtalar joint. When we talk about midfoot, then we talk about this cuneiforms, cuboid, and the navicular bone. And when you talk about forefoot, that is distal to the tarsal metatarsal joints. So whenever you talk about the region, talk forefoot injuries or midfoot problems or hindfoot problem, you should know where it is first. And it is important to understand that arches of the foot, that is very, very important. We have two longitudinal arch. One is in the medial, one is on the lateral, and the other one is transverse. So these arches are very, very important for the human being to have the propulsion while walking, and it balances the normal walking by distributing the weight from the heel, from the calcaneum to the ball of the toe, and it is maintained with a lot of ligaments. There are 4 layers of ligament which maintains the arch over the transverse side, and also the transverse arch also is maintained both anteriorly and posteriorly with your tibialis posterior, tibialis anterior, and in the down it is maintained with the tibialis posterior and peroneus longus. So it is very important to understand these arches are very, very important for the normal propulsion. And also it is important to understand the columns of the foot. I think especially in the midfoot, if you are dealing with the Lisfranc injuries or any other midfoot problems, you should know what are all the columns which you are involved in the midfoot. So it is important to understand that medial column is formed by the medial cuneiform and the first metatarsal, and the basically, and also it includes the navicular and talus. So basically, I'm quoting here mainly for your midfoot injuries. And also you should understand there is a middle column that is involving the second and third metatarsal with intermediate and lateral cuneiform, fourth and metatarsals with the cuboid, that is the lateral column. The second metatarsal joint, tarsometatarsal joint, is accessed almost, it's just like a central keystone, and it is very, very rigid. There is no movement at all, followed by slight movement in the first tarsometatarsal joint and third tarsometatarsal joint. But fourth and fifth joints are very, very important because they have a good mobility. So that helps you to walk in uneven surfaces. So they have some movement in the tarsometatarsal joint of fourth and fifth. So that is understand this anatomy, so that when you fix the midfoot injuries, it is important that you preserve the lateral column and you can fix rigidly the medial and middle column. As I said, the medial column is already you understood that. As I told, it's from the talus to navicular to the medial cuneiform to the first metatarsal. And also, as I said about the lateral column, it is very important that fourth and fifth tarsometatarsal joint, including the calcaneum, called lateral column. And it is very important that proximal transverse arch, which I already told, that it is maintained with the three cuneiforms and cuboid along with the tarsometatarsal joints and intermetatarsal ligaments, which maintains this transverse arch. And also it is understand that you should know about the Lisfranc ligament, which is an Y-shaped ligament between the medial cuneiform to the base of the second and third metatarsal. So this is the important stabilizer of the first and second tarsometatarsal joint, that is a medial and a middle column. When it comes to the ankle joint, I think all of you are aware that it's got movements of the dorsiflexion and the plantar flexion, and then we have a normal range of 10 to 50 degrees of dorsiflexion and 45 to 50 degrees of plantar flexion. And the subtalar joint is, you have to understand the subtalar joint, especially when you deal with the subtalar joint, it is important to understand the facets of the subtalar joint. Even though it has got anterior, middle, and the posterior facet is most important. You can see that this is the posterior facet, this is the concave surface which articulates with the concave surface of the calcaneum. So it is important that this posterior facet of the calcaneum articulates with the talus is the most important joint when you deal with any calcaneal fracture treatment, or if you want to do any fusion. So the posterior facet is the weight-bearing facet. So you have to, it is very important that you should fuse only posterior facet. You can fuse all the facets, but at least it is very important that you should fuse the posterior facet. I'm not going into the anatomies of the plantar foot. I think all of you should be aware that there are 3 layers of muscles are involved in the plantar aspect of the foot. So it's very complex anatomy. And also it is important that you should know some ligaments, especially when you're dealing on the lateral side. You should know 2 ligaments, that is the anterior talofibular ligament, ATFL, and anterior inferior tibiofibular ligament and calcaneofibular ligament. Why it is important? Any lateral instability, especially sports persons, comes with the lateral joint pain or instability. Most often it is because of the ATFL tear, like this is the one. And also medial side, we know that it is very important to know the deltoid complex. We know that deltoid ligament complex, they are very, very important in maintaining in ankle joints. So whenever they have a bimalleolar fracture or you have a syndesmotic injury, they can have a deltoid ligament avulsion injury, which may need to repair. So it is understand this anatomy, very, very important. And also the posterior side, the ligaments are very, very stronger. And particularly, we know that the posterior inferior tibiofibular ligament is very important, which is attached to the posterior malleolus. So whenever you know that there is a trimalleolar fracture, you know that the posterior fragment is attached to the posterior inferior tibiofibular ligament. Of course, spring ligament and Lisfranc ligament, which is very, very important. When you come to the clinical examination, I think it is important to understand how do you examining is also is very, very important. Whether to sit or stand, the patient and also the doctor. I would recommend that always that you should stand and do the examination, whether it is a foot or knee or hip. I would always recommend that patient should sit in the couch and you should stand. So if you still sit in the clinic like a general practitioner and ask the patient to sit in next to you and examine, there is a possibility that you can miss many findings. So that is only for the physician to examine the chest and legs. So when you examine the knee and ankle or a foot, I mean, it's very important that you got to make the patient sit and you have to stand. And before you make the patient sit, it is important when they come to the clinic, you can watch the foot or you can make the patient to walk and see the gait. Gait gives you a lot of clue. Sometimes when you make the patient come, when the patient already sitting in the couch, you may miss a lot of findings. So when the patient walks, then you know whether the patient is walking with equinus gait or a calcaneal gait, or patient is walking on the lateral border or the medial border. Then you know that there is some major issues are going on when the patient walks itself. So it is important. And the important also examine the shoes where the wear and tear is taking place. That also gives you clue that where the border of weight is taking place. And when you examine the foot and ankle, you should also understand that this is not a single joint like a knee or hip. So if patient says a pain in the foot, many times I seen doctors from the postgraduate or other, okay, any foot pain, okay, nothing, just give a medicine and send them off. No, it is very important that foot has got so many bones, so many joints. So it is not just foot pain. So you should know where is the pathology from. So it is very important to ask the patient to show with the point of the finger before you start your examination. Then you know at least exactly which anatomy is involved in that pathology. So it's important that ask the patient to point with the finger, whether the ankle or the subtalar joint or the midfoot or forefoot. Then you can focus on that part to do further examination. And also the appearance of the foot is very important. Always compare with the normal side. Long-standing issues like any knee or thigh, they can have atrophy of the foot also. Sometimes you can see the smaller foot compared to the normal side. Of course, the deformities are going to be very obvious. We should not miss any deformities. And also anything which you involved, whether ankle or hind foot or midfoot or forefoot, it is important that you see the plantar aspect. You see the plantar aspect of the toes. Look for any ulcers, any skin lesions, any vascular changes. They are also very important when you want to manage these cases. That can have sometimes some fungal infection in the toes. So when you operate something on the midfoot, there's a possibility they can get infection. So it is also gives you clues that when you have a calluses, corns, that's also give you the clue that they have a deformity of like a toes, claw toe or the hammer toe, like that kind of deformity. So when you come to the patient points, if you think that, okay, patient points to the finger to the ankle, then the patient presents with the pain and swelling in the ankle, you should know what all the condition can cause pain and swelling in the ankle. Then only you can think and understand that pathology. So what are the most common causes of pain and swelling? Any patient presents with the pain and swelling in the ankle, that could be in a synovitis, could be in a rheumatoid, or any seropositive or a seronegative synovitis. Or the patient says that I had a pain, I had an instability, and followed with the pain and swelling, then that patient can have an ankle instability, especially the patient points the finger on the anterolateral aspect of the ankle. So that could be an ATFL tear or along with the ATFL plus CFL tear. The same patient points the finger on the medial side with the pain and swelling. If the swelling is more towards the below the medial malleolus, then it could be an tibialis posterior synovitis. Or the patient says the tenderness over the anteromedial joint line or the anterolateral joint line, then there could be an OCD or osteochondral lesions. If it is or it could be a distal tibia too, or it could be an arthritic patient, even an older patient, or the patient had an old trauma that comes back with pain, or it could be a secondary arthritis, or it could be a primary arthritis in an old patient, or secondary to any rheumatoid. Or if the patient is a diabetic with the loss of sensation, that could be a Charcot uncle. So you should think all these conditions when the patient presents with the pain in the ankle, especially on the medial and the lateral side. Of course, the deformities are very important, which you should know. Equinus deformity, which is very obvious, you will know that. That means patient walks on the toes. Calcaneal deformity, patient walks on the calcaneum. That means forefoot will not take weight and the heel only will takes the weight. And especially when the equinus deformity, forefoot only takes the weight and the heel will not take the weight. So equinus deformity could be a tendinous contracture that you should examine by the test, or it could be a calcaneus deformity, could be due to tibialis anterior contracture. At the same time, we should look for a varus or valgus malunion if the patient is a post-traumatic. He had an injury at 1 or 2 years before. The present with the deformity could be an varus or valgus due to the malunion. The same deformities can be due to Charcot angle also. That could be there an unstable ankle. Any patient present with the pain in the ankle, even the point to the ankle, also it's very important to examine the hind foot. Look for the subtalar joint pain also, because most of them they can overlap, especially if they have an inflammatory issue. We don't know whether pain is only in the ankle. That sometimes only if you go and examine the hind foot, that patient may have a pain in the hind foot too, that is in the subtalar joint. So it is for the management point of view, it is very important to examine the adjacent joints in the foot. That is very, very important. When you come to the hind foot, patient says, so I have pain in the hind foot. So what all the things can come in the lateral side? So anything which is on the lateral side, this is the fibula, this is the peroneal tendon. We can see that this is the fibula, these are the peroneal tendon over here, and underneath this is the calcaneal fibular ligament. So any patient has a pain and tenderness over here, then that could be coming from the subtalar joint. It could be a sinus thoracic syndrome, or it could be in a rheumatoid subtalar arthritis, or if it is in a post-traumatic calcaneal fracture present late with the pain, then it could be in a subtalar arthritis or just with malunion. So it is important that you should ask the patient to point it with the finger, then you will know where exactly. So the lateral side, you can suspect all those things. When the patient says they have pain in the heel, then we know that that pain could be a plantar fasciitis. The plantar fasciitis has got many causes. Maybe just a problem of the calcaneal branch of the tibial nerve, or sometimes it's just a pure plantar fasciitis. Sometimes in a old osteoporotic calcaneal fracture can have a stress fracture. So how will you examine the calcaneal stress fracture? You just squeeze the heel. That means they'll have a lot of time. The plantar fasciitis patient will not have a pain when you squeeze the calcaneum. But when you have a calcaneal stress fracture, if you squeeze, then that the patient can have a excruciating pain. So the management is totally different. The plantar fasciitis you just treat with the footwear and medications, but the calcaneal stress fracture should be immobilized with the brace as a boot or a plaster. When the patient says pain in the posterior aspect of the heel, what all the things can cause? So it is very important. We know that this is the tendoachilles, this is the posterior aspect, this is the medial side, and this is on the lateral side. If anything patient says pain over here, that is medial to the tendoachilles at the level of the ankle joint, that could be a just tenosynovitis or the flexor hallucis longus also, we don't know. Or the patient has got a tenderness, pain on the both medial and lateral aspect of the tendoachilles at the level of the ankle joint, could be an osteogonum. Sometimes they can have that kind of pain. When you come to the distal aspect, that is the distal incision level of the tendoachilles over here, anything which is have a pain in the central midpoint of the tendoachilles incision in the middle of the tendoachilles, it could be an incisional tendinopathy. If the same patient has got a pain and tenderness over 5 to 6 centimeters above the tendoachilles, it could be a non-incisional tendinopathy. If they are the same patient or other patients can have a pain on either side of the tendoachilles incision level. Here they can have a pain and swelling. Here they have a pain and swelling. That could be due to retrocalcaneal bursitis due to the Hanglin syndrome. Most often the incisional tendinopathy and retrocalcaneal bursitis can overlap together. We can see this patient has got a swelling in the middle. Most often they have an incisional tendinopathy. Sometimes if they have a swelling in the lateral and the medial aspect also, then they can have an incisional tendinopathy along with retrocalcaneal bursitis due to Hanglin syndrome. And also it's important, anything in the hind foot, you should also look for the deformities like a varus and valgus. And it can happen in many situations like a Charcot ankle or in a flat foot, or it could be a subtalar calcaneal fracture malunion. So then even that can have a deformity. So make sure these patients, you observe the deformity and understand the deformity, because in the management wise, you cannot, if the patient present with subtalar arthritis, you cannot just treat that subtalar arthritis. You should also look for the deformity, and you should try to correct the deformity, and also you should correct the arthritis. So in the hind foot, you should look for a varus and valgus deformities. This is how you examine from the behind. Normally you will have a mild valgus heel foot that is normal. You see here that you'll see maybe one toe here. You see the lot of toes here. That when you see this kind of valgus, If you see a too many, so many toe sign, then that could be a sign of flat foot, and excessive heel valgus also is a source signs of maybe the type 2 flat foot. Here you can see this patient has got a varus deformity. So it is important that understand these deformities and examine from behind. When you come to the midfoot, when the patient presents with the pain and swelling, if the patient had a history of trauma, then we know that it could be a neglected Lisfranc injury. Pure ligamentous injury sometimes most often is missed in the foot. So the patient doesn't have any proper fracture over there. That could be a pure ligamentous injury. So you should suspect a ligamentous injury of Lisfranc. You should take a weight-bearing stress X-rays in these cases. Or the patient points to the finger over the fifth metatarsal, it could be a Jones fracture. Or they can have a post-traumatic arthritis in the tarsometatarsal joints that are very, very important. Or they could be an inflammatory. So midfoot also, it's one of the common cause from the rheumatoid arthritis. Or if the patient presents with the medial column, it could be just Muller-Wee syndrome. We know that Muller-Wee syndrome is an avascular necrosis of the navicular bone. So they can have a collapse and arthritis of the medial side. So you should carefully look for that. If it further medial side, then it could be a tarsal tunnel syndrome. Of course, other causes of the pain in the midfoot due to the flat foot. If it is in type 2A, then they can have a pain on the medial side. If they have a severe forefoot abduction, then they can have a pain on the lateral side. Or it could be just cellulitis in a old diabetic patient. And the cellulitis, it has to be differentiated from the Charcot. If there's a diabetic patient, you should look for the sensation. Then you should differentiate the cellulitis and Charcot. Maybe we can address later in the further lectures. In the midfoot, we should look for the cavus deformity, or it could be a flat foot deformity. And also you can look for a metatarsus adductus. If it is a Charcot joint, then you can look for sometimes rocker bottom deformity because of the collapse of your talonavicular joint. The patient presents with rocker bottom deformity. So it is very important to look for these deformities, and you know the severeness of the pathology. So from this is how you look for the arch. This is the normal arch. This is how your midfoot collapse can happen. Sometimes it can aggravate further if it is a Charcot or any rocker bottom deformity, if there is a more collapse. When you come to the forefoot, what are all the causes pain in the forefoot? You should suspect metatarsalgia. You should look for the Martin's neuroma, especially if the patient presents with pain between the third and fourth toe. They will have a typical pain in the plantar aspect between the fourth and fifth toe, just proximal to the metatarsophalangeal joint. That they also have a numbness or sometimes sensory loss between these toes. Or any new army recruit or police recruit or any athlete, if the person with the pain, if there is no obvious fracture, you should suspect stress fractures in these cases, or should suspect the Friedreich disease or MTP synovitis, especially in the inflammatory condition. You can have a metatarsophalangeal joint synovitis, or you can have an inflamed bunion, or sometimes you can have a sesamoiditis, or even sesamoid fracture is not very uncommon. So any patient presents with the pain in the first metatarsophalangeal joint, we should look for around that. It could be an inflamed bunion if it is on the medial side. If it is the plantar side, then you should suspect it to be a sesamoiditis or the fracture. So other deformities, I think most of you are aware what all the deformities you should look for, like a hallux valgus or the hallux rigidus, clochos, hematos, and malactos. I think you might be aware of that. To the nutshell, again, to refresh the points which we talked about, any patients presents with pain in the first metatarsophalangeal joint, metatarsophalangeal joint, you should suspect it would be a hallux rigidus. That patient can have a hallux valgus with the painful bunion on the medial side. Or anybody presents over the pain over the second metatarsophalangeal joint, you should suspect about the Friedreich infection, that is the head of the second metatarsal avian, that you should suspect. That is very rare, but it can happen. So anything which is having pain over the midfoot area, this area, you should suspect Lisfranc injury. And anybody can have a pain in the fifth metatarsal, you should suspect a Jones fracture. So if they have a pain all over the tarsometatarsal joint, then you should suspect midfoot arthritis due to any other degenerative or an inflammatory condition. As I already talked about the Muller-Weiss syndrome, they'll have a pain just on the medial column, that is avascular necrosis of the navicular bone, or any patient presents with the pain in the anteromedial side. That could be an impingement, that is called a typical footballer's ankle, where they'll have an osteophyte. If you ask the patient to do a dorsiflexion, they'll have a pain. Sometimes they have a restricted dorsiflexion also. So that is where patient presents with the anterior impingement syndrome. And if the patient presents with the pain over the anteromedial joint line, or it could be due to an ankle arthritis or due to synovitis. If the patient has got a same anterolateral side, it could be an anterolateral impingement due to scarring or due to synovitis or even due to lateral instability with the scarring can cause anterolateral impingement. And anything just distal to the anterolateral joint line, you can have a ATFL tear, which we already talked about. Or if the patient has got pain over the cuboid area, it could be a nut crack fracture in the cuboid. Anything in the patient presents on the medial side, which I already talked about later, that near the tibialis posterior attachment, it could be a stage 1 flat foot with the tibialis posterior tenosynovitis. Or the patient has got a pain in the plantar aspect of the first, great toe, that could be a sesamoiditis or a sesamoid fracture. As already talked about, between the third and fourth toe plantar aspect, at the level of the metatarsophalangeal joint, it could be a Martin's neuroma, which you should suspect. Anything on the heel and the plantar aspect, it's a plantar fasciitis. And anything on the, I think, ingrowing toenail, you know how to examine that, which I don't need to describe that. Anything on the lateral side, again, I forgot to include. Anything just behind and posterior to the fibula, it could be a peroneal tendinopathy. So usually they'll have a pain and swelling over the peroneal tendons here. So it could be an inflammatory, or it could be anything peroneal tubercle pathology, which is here, or it could be a peroneal longus rupture. So it is very important. You should also look for the peroneal tendon pathology in the lateral side, which I forgot to say. We already talked about the retrocalcaneal bursitis. Usually they'll have either side of the tendoachilles attachment, they'll have a pain and swelling. And anything in the incision level, that is in the center point, middle or posterior midpoint of the tendoachilles incision level pain, it could be an incisional tendinopathy. As already talked about the sinus tarsi tenderness, it could be an subtalar arthritis or sinus tarsi syndrome, which you should be aware of that. And we talked about the metatarsal stress fracture. Anything in the new recruit aggressive practice in the athletes can cause stress fracture. This is how we examine on the medial side, which I forgot to put the photograph there. I think you know the anatomy about the neurovascular structures, tibialis posteriors, and all those things. So how do you examine the ankle? It's very important, the range of movement, how to do examination. So make sure that you don't allow the subtalar movement. So lock the subtalar joint, do the ankle movements like this. And also for the subtalar joint, you should lock the ankle joint, do the dorsiflexion. You can do the dorsiflexion, then you lock the ankle joint, then you mobilize the subtalar joint. So that is how you should examine the subtalar joint. When you come to the muscle testing, I think two important muscle testing you should know on the medial side and the lateral side. One is the tibialis posterior and the tibialis anterior on the medial side. Tibialis posterior, you know how to do that. You have to do a plantar flexion and inversion against resistance. And when you do a tibialis anterior, you do the dorsiflexion and inversion and against resistance will give you a clue whether it is working or not. The same peroneal you should examine by dorsiflexion and aversion against the resistance. I think it is important. I'm covering only the major tendons which has to be examined. Last but not least, it is very important that in any case you should always look for the neurological examination, look for all the sensory loss. You look for the lateral border of the foot for the sural nerve. You should look for the medial border of the foot for any tibial nerve sensory loss. And distal pulses are very, very important, especially in old patient, diabetic patients. You should also look for the peripheral vascular disease. This point I'm trying to emphasize on it, especially in an older patient. If you are treating in a diabetic Charcot ankle or any other midfoot fusion due to arthritis in an older patient, you should look for a peripheral vascular disease. If there is any doubt, you should investigate for Doppler, because they can have a very monophasic flow. Sometimes people have a variance of the artery. Some of them will have only peroneal dominant artery. So they may not have a flow on the tibialis anterior and the tibialis posterior and dorsalis pedis. So in these cases, if you don't operate on the lateral side, if you damage peroneal artery, then they'll end in amputation. So it's very important to look for the peripheral vascular diseases. I think with that, I will try to close it, as it's already 35 minutes. Tanvir? Hello? Tanvir, can you hear me?
Yes, sir, we can hear you. Yes, sir, that was an excellent presentation, sir.
So what I thought, I just give a overall basic examination of this foot and ankle here. Following that, I have a 6-7 cases, but that will cover in maybe in my third or fourth lecture. That will be interesting to cover different conditions of the foot and ankle examination and how to diagnose. So this will be just basic examination.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you for your tremendously informative presentation, and I think it will help a lot to all the doctors. Now I would like to request our academic expert panel to share their knowledge regarding this presentation. I would like to request Dr. Rajiv Raman sir first to share his knowledge. Dr. Rajiv sir, please. Dr. Rajiv sir, can you hear me?
Yeah.
There is a noise. There is a noise. Dr. Rajiv sir, we cannot hear you. Dr. Rajiv sir, we cannot hear you.
Now you can hear?
Yeah, you can. We can hear now. Yes, Rajiv, go ahead.
Okay. So, Sundar, what are the correlation of different gait pattern and the functional assessment in foot and ankle clinical examination?
Sorry, come back again. I didn't hear you properly.
Correlation between the different gait pattern and functional assessment. The gait pattern, normally when we see.
So that's why I said that when I say the gait pattern, it is important that you will be getting clue. I mean, the gait is very, very important, especially patient has got a equinus deformity or the calcaneal deformity. These are the two important deformities which you may observe in the hind foot. At the same time, when the patient walks on the medial side of the medial border of the foot or a lateral border of the foot, then that could be an ankle subluxation or a subtalar subluxation. That patient can have a varus and valgus. If the patient has got a varus, then they'll be walking on the lateral border of the foot. If the patient has got a valgus deformity, they'll be walking on the medial border of the foot. So that will give you a clue that this patient might be having this kind of major issues in the particular joint. And also it's important that why the deformities are important in the foot and ankle. Sometimes the deformity can cause secondary that could be a secondary cause for the pain in distal or proximal to the joint. Suppose if the patient has got a cavus deformity, this patient already has got a lateral instability, ankle instability. Then in this kind of patients, if you just or varus deformity with the lateral instability, these patients should be treated the deformities also. If the patient has got a recurrent instability of the ankle with the varus heel, if you just repair a ATFL, that will not solve the problem. They may have a recurrent issue, they come back with failure. So in this patient, we may need to correct the varus where we do a displacement osteotomy along with the ATFL repair. So that's why the clinical examination, not that particular problem, you should also examine the proximal and distal to the joint, because it's a single unit with multiple joints.
And you had a very good test for the anterior ankle impingement. Nowadays, we see lots of athletes with the posterior ankle impingement. So how do you assess clinically?
Yeah, same way. It's like anterior impingement, you have a pain in the dorsiflexion. The same way, if anything in the posterior side, you do a forceful plantar flexion, then they'll have a lot of pain, especially the patient, I mean, maybe an athlete, it could be a ballet dancer, they can have a flexor hallucis tenosynovitis or osteogonum pathology. This patient should be examined for with the plantar flexion. Ask them, the patient, to do a plantar flexion. You try to force further, then they will have a lot of pain. So anterior impingement and posterior impingement, just making the movement, you will know.
Thank you.
Thank you. And also the posterior side, it is always very important that sometimes patient can have a osteogonum or other issue or a big osteophyte. But sometimes subtalar arthritis will have a lot of osteophytes in the posterior side. So you have to be very, that's why I told, if you're a patient have even the pain or a lot of osteophyte or a big bone in the posterior side, sometimes that may not be the pathology, that be normal. So you should clinically look for where is the tenderness. So that patients can have a pain on the lateral side, that is sinus tarsus side. That could be a patient is because of the subtalar arthritis with a lot of osteophytes in the posterior side. So if you just go and excise the posterior osteophyte, that will not solve the problem. So that patient may need a subtalar fusion along with the removal of osteophyte.
All right. Yeah, Amjad sir.
Oh, thank you very much, sir, for your nice question. Now, I'd like to request Professor Amjad sir to share his knowledge regarding the presentation.
Oh, nothing to say. It's a really fantastic presentation from Dr. Sundaraj. Yeah, I'm very much amazed with your presentation. And I would request Dr. Tanvir to continue his presentation more in coming days, so that this should be circulated in our website and this training program. It is so fantastic. I mean, academic program, particularly the examination of the foot from hind foot, mid foot, forefoot is really very much unacceptable and very much for our younger generation. The clinically, Dr. Sundaraj, how there is a now problem in our part or everywhere. There is a plantar fasciitis. What is the causes of plantar fasciitis and how you are managing these sort of cases? This is very common to our part.
So that is the whole, yeah. The plantar fasciitis is the, I know even for the surgeon also, for the patient also, it's just a bigger headache. And especially plantar fasciitis, only thing is what I try to rule out, only one is the calcaneal stress syndrome. If the patient doesn't have a calcaneal stress syndrome, then you think it's a plantar fasciitis. Even though it could be just a plantar, your ligament issue, or it could be as very rarely you can have a compression of the branch of the calcaneal branch of the tibial nerve. That can also have symptoms on the medial side. So most often, whatever their causes, I don't usually go and look for the causes unless the patient comes with a recurrent pain, not improvement with all the conservative methods, injection and everything. But in my opinion, I don't operate on any plantar fasciitis. 90% of the patient, 99% of the patients become all right. You counsel the patient that it is going to take a long time. And I tell them it will take 6 months, it will take 2 years. And it is important that I teach them with stretching exercises. You like a toe standing or pushing the wall, along with the footwear. In my opinion, in my experience, which I had seen, but with just wearing the footwear properly at home and outside, that patients are completely all right. Only thing is sometimes patients will not wear the footwear at home and they will only wear it outside. They will say, come back with pain. So it's very important to wear the footwear at home. Just always I prescribe two chappals. Whether you want to walking, for the walking, if you want a shoe, I will prescribe shoe. If you want a chappal, I will prescribe. But at home, you should wear one more chappal too. So when they wear a chappal and do the exercises, 99% they become all right. But I say that at the time taking will take long time, 6 months to 2 years. So they should wear that chappal. That's all.
How do you, do you believer of the injection, steroid and local injection?
Yes, sir. If the patient comes back with, even after wearing chappal, even after doing proper physiotherapy, if they have pain, I try 1 or 2 shots of steroid injection. Some of them becomes better.
I like to mention here, I was attending the American Academy a foot and ankle meeting, it is said that only you counsel the patient. You just tell him that, as you have said, 2 to 3 years, and do exercise, reduce your weight, wear the shoes, soft shoes. That is the only answer. Even they are not advising for steroid injection. But it doesn't actually. It is a locally sometimes help, but it doesn't. Help so much.
Absolutely, because whenever the patient says the plantar fasciitis patient, usually I tell them, see, it doesn't come with because you are obese or you are lean. It doesn't matter.
Yes.
It comes to everyone. So I told them, even I wore a shoe in the hospital for 2 years. So I so me as an example that, see, I wore these normal shoes for almost 2 years in the hospital, which was made in our hospital. Then it disappeared after 1.5 years. So I tell, so see, even I wore it. So it is really very important that you understand and counsel the patient. Then most of them are happy. If you say that it's going to take long time, then
Here I'm telling the patient because I'm an old man. So in our time, 20, 50 years back or 30, 40 years back, we used to go to the village and we used to walk around, and there are everywhere the grasses are there. Or now there is no grass. Everywhere is pakka in the building. So there is another reason, I think.
It doesn't matter, sir. Because you counsel the patients. I don't restrict any patients to do any activities because that pain only for the first few steps. That also you tell them, okay, you just cross that 2 minutes, then you'll become all right. Then they are also happy. Then they go for a walking. They do all normal activities.
Another point is regarding the flat foot. How do you in the flat foot? Because this is also a common problem. And what is your way of treating flat foot? You were the expert.
Yeah, flat foot is a huge subject. It's very difficult to say in this phenomena. Maybe I can have if you want, I can take flat foot as one full lecture. That because that is very common issue.
Common issue, right?
Maybe we can have a flat foot as another topic because Tanvir asked 4 course. Maybe we can do one flat foot last one.
Right. Okay, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Tanvir, please note it down as he has said. Please take him sessions so we can continue and learn something from him. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Definitely.
I'm really so happy to hear from you. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Definitely, sir. We will continue this session, and we hope it will continue for at least 5 to 6 sessions. And we have different type of academic discussion like flat foot, surgery, and arthroscopy of ankle. And we don't want to leave our very beloved teacher Sundarajan sir, and we want to learn many things from Sundar sir. So I think this is all about today. And thank you very much our academic panel, and thank you very much our honorable speaker for being with us, and thank you viewers for stay tuned with us. Please stay tuned with Raj TV and Orthopedic Solution Academy. And I would like to give thanks to Renato Pharmaceuticals Limited for sponsoring this program, and definitely Raj TV for being with us. And I'm Dr. Mohammad Tanvir Ashraf from Orthopedic Solution Academy, saying bye-bye to you. I hope you all will be with us in the next Friday with another topic of discussion. Till then, bye-bye.
You are watching Raj TV, Jagorone, Bangladesh. Please subscribe our channel.